Everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. And of course, a big thank you to CAI for hosting. We're thrilled, as always, to have the opportunity to speak with you guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Longard. I'm an energy consultant at Honeydew. And today, I'm joined by our Honeydew COO, Mr. Andrew Zimdahl, as well as Molly Peacock, a partner of Billy Hundley, and co-chair of our very own fantastic DC LAC. And today, as the title suggests, we want to shine some light on four multifamily buildings in the district that have really handled the building energy performance standards well. And these are going to be buildings that have been really proactive and have taken strong initiative to make improvements to their scores. So, without any further ado, let's jump right in.
I
So,
think you gotta share your screen. I don't think it's coming up, David.
you guys can't see my screen? Oh,
I can see it.
Oh, it's just me then.
you guys can see the agenda slide?
Well, wonderful people in the audience. If you can't see something, please let us know in the chat. Oh, I'm seeing people can see it. So
Okay, good.
thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, guys. Well, this is going to be our agenda for today. So first thing, we're going to go through a very brief BEPS and benchmarking overview. I'm sure the majority of you guys are extremely familiar, but just to be certain we're all up to speed and everybody's on the same page. From there, we're going to jump right into the case studies. As I just mentioned, we're going to look at four different buildings and the steps, the specific steps that they took or are currently taking to set themselves up for BEPS Cycle 1 success. Lorena Garcia from Avarice Realty, she's going to be joining us for the third case study, and she'll just be talking about her perspective and experience as a property manager for one of these BEPS buildings. Then we're going to have Molly speaking to us at the end to detail some recent legislative updates. This is revolving around DC BEPS, solar, Energy Star, and then lastly, we'll wrap up with Q&A. So as we go, feel free to add questions into the Q&A box, and depending on who's speaking, whether that be me or AZ, whoever isn't, we'll be trying to type answers, and whichever we don't get to, we'll address in order at the end. But I'll pass it off to Andrew to get us going.
Great. Thank you for the gracious introduction, David, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar. This is a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts. We've done a lot of presentations about both benchmarking and BEPS, but let's just do a quick overview of benchmarking for folks who don't have some familiarity with it. So at the highest level, benchmarking is simply reporting your utility data and different characteristics about your building to a local jurisdiction. In this case, it's to the DC Office of Energy and Environment. And the main things that are going to be uploaded into that is how much electricity do you use each year, how much natural gas do you use each year, what is the square footage of your building. Those are really the most important things, but there's a lot of details within the framework here. So after you've imported all of your data into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, the platform is going to generate a couple of key metrics. And the first one we'll discuss is the Energy Star score, or the ESS. This is a number between 1 and 100. The higher, the better. If you've got a score of 99, that means your building is 99% more efficient than every other building of that particular space type. And the space type in Energy Star Portfolio Manager that we are going to be focusing on is multifamily buildings, which is what every condominium and cooperative would fall into. The other key metric in ESPM is the site EUI adjusted to current year. The EUI is the energy usage intensity, and that's very simply the total amount of energy your building uses in a year divided by the square footage. So we've got a good relative metric that we can compare to other buildings, and will give us a good indication of how efficient that building is at consuming energy. Unlike the Energy Star score, the site EUI number, you want to be lower. It's just like a golf score. That means your building is using less energy per square foot, and that's ultimately the goal of both the benchmarking and the BEPS program in DC. DOE takes benchmarking requirements very seriously. If you do not comply by the deadline, your building could be fined $100 a day. and that can add up really fast, especially if you ignore it for years. And we've seen that unfortunately happen. And in some cases, buildings have accrued penalties of $50,000, which is definitely something your board wouldn't be happy to see. The important deadlines is it's going to be May 1st of every year that you have to have your benchmarking report submitted by. Those requirements have been in place for many years for buildings over 50,000 square feet. Just started in 2024 for every building over 25,000 square feet. And the new deadline for buildings, all buildings over 10,000 square feet is going to begin next year, May 1st, 2026. In case you guys are curious to see what your building's Energy Star score and energy usage intensity are, you can reference at that link at the bottom of the screen, energybenchmarkingdc.org. All right, so moving on to the next slide here. So this is an overview of the Building Energy Performance Standards, or BEPS. And every building has to determine whether they are subject to BEPS. And to do that, you compare your Energy Star score to the median Energy Star score of that space type of all the buildings in DC. So for multifamily buildings, that score is a 66 out of 100. If in 2019 your building had an Energy Star score of 66 or higher, you're not subject to BEPS, and you don't really have to be that concerned about it for this 5-year compliance cycle. But if you're 65 or below, then you will be subject to this compliance cycle. And the main goals of the program is you're going to have to either reach a 66, or you're going to have to reduce your energy usage by 20% within that 5-year period, which is going to be ending next year. So if your building is 50,000 square feet or above, really good idea to be making those energy conservation measure improvements this year, so that will reflect fully on your 2026 year data. If your building is under 50,000 square feet, but above 25,000 square feet, your first compliance cycle is going to begin in 28 and end in 32. And then if you're in that last tranche of 10,000, between 10,000 and 25,000 square feet, it's going to begin in 2034 and end in 2038. But it's very important to note that the 50,000 square feet buildings are still going to be subject to BEPS review in cycle 2 and cycle 3. So just because you get through cycle 1 in good standing does not mean you won't necessarily have to make some improvements in cycle 2 or cycle 3. All right,
Okay.
so I'm going to pass it back over to David, and we're going to get into the case studies.
Yeah, thank you, AZ, and thank you for the context there. So for each building, we're going to look at their BEPS background, and this includes their baseline scores, as well as our involvement at Honeydew and the initial approach that each building took to reach compliance or get closer to compliance. So then we're going to look at the specific projects and or ECMs, or energy conservation measures, that each building implemented and how these upgrades affected both their energy usage and subsequently their scores. And then, of course, we'll look at the main takeaways from each building. And really, the point of these case studies is not just to celebrate these amazing buildings, but also to show you guys that there are a variety of different ways to reaching BEPS compliance. So now for our first case study, we're going to look at the beautiful Crescent Towers condo on Vermont Ave. So first things first, taking a look at their BEPS background and the initial approach that they took to attack BEPS compliance. Crescent Towers had a baseline Energy Star score of 59. As AZ was mentioning, the baseline score was from 2019. And as AZ also mentioned, this falls below that multifamily minimum threshold of 66 set by DOEE. And this is essentially what led to them being subject to BEPS Cycle 1. So now a quick look at how were we involved at Honeydew, and how did Crescent Towers utilize our services. So we provide Crescent Towers with annual benchmarking. So that means we're always monitoring their scores, monitoring their usage, and then providing BEPS consulting accordingly. So we also assisted them with bid collection, comparison, and recommendations when it came to getting an ASHRAE Level 2 audit. And getting one of these audits, which we're going to look into more in depth in the next slide, is the first thing we recommend for the majority of our BEPS clients. So an ASHRAE Level 2 audit is a fantastic diagnostic tool because it analyzes every aspect of a building's inefficiency and then provides a series of recommended ECMs. And each ECM in the audit comes complete with extremely accurate usage savings, as well as financial metrics and BEPS-related metrics showing precisely how much each upgrade would not only cost, how fast it would get paid back, but also how much it's going to improve your Energy Star score and adjusted site UI. So these audits are really invaluable for buildings subject to BEPS because they give you a concrete roadmap to compliance that you can lean on and plan around. Sorry. So now this next slide shows the exact results of the audit and the metrics that Crescent Towers used to make decisions. So keep in mind, Crescent Towers was out of 59. They were in a pretty decent spot. They only needed 7 points to get to that threshold of 66. The second column, ESS increase, shows how much each ECM would improve their Energy Star score. In Crescent Towers' specific case, they'd already known that their boiler and domestic hot water heaters were already aging. They needed replacement. So they chose these two larger projects, as well as to replace their pumps and install VFDs or variable frequency drives to optimize air pressure. But the audit made choosing to replace their pumps and install the VFDs easy, as it's the best ECM from the bunch besides the very top two that they already knew that they were going to do when you're looking at it from a combination of Energy Star score increase and short payback period perspective. And even for installing new boilers and domestic hot water heaters, which the building already wanted to do, the audit is pivotal in reassuring that these two projects are going to be a good idea, right? So it's obvious that replacing their old boilers and heaters would help their efficiency, but what's much less obvious is how much these projects may actually increase their scores. So getting an audit, and specifically an ASHRAE Level 2 audit, really gives the building the peace of mind that, in this case, spending nearly $300,000 is going to get them 19 points, and that's going to alleviate a lot of that BEPS Cycle 1 non-compliance pressure. So now looking at how do things end up for Crescent Towers. So by using the guidance provided by the audit and by implementing these 3 ECMs, they ended up reducing their electric usage by 10% from their baseline in 2023 and 6% from their baseline in 2024. And they were able to decrease their gas usage very substantially by 36% from their baseline in 2023 and 27% from their baseline in 2024. And not only did they get tons of financial savings from these decreases in usage, they of course also got a massive Energy Star score increase. They got a 22-point increase, giving them an 81 in 2024. And this is phenomenal, not only because it surpassed the score increase that was outlined in the audit, but also because they're so far past the 66, they have a strong margin for error if their usage creeps back up either this year or next year before compliance for Cycle 1 is assessed at the end of 2026. So the key takeaway, Crescent Towers was very proactive, and they leveraged the information that they got from the audit to make timely, cost-effective upgrades to be in a really great spot to comply with BEPS Cycle 1 and to even avoid any future cycles, like AZ mentioned, being a possibility for buildings over 50,000 square feet.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. So now let's look at Fillmore Plaza. So Fillmore Plaza took a different route to comply with their BEPS requirements. And specifically, they used an elevated solar canopy system in order to generate clean energy, which really helped their Energy Star score, as we're going to see. There's a couple of other benefits to using the elevated canopy system. It keeps their roof cooler. It extends the lifespan of their roof. It allows them to do maintenance on their roof much more easier than a traditionally ballasted solar array. And it's also very nice because it allows us to put a lot more solar panels up on that roof and generate more clean energy. So let's look at a little bit of the background on Fillmore Plaza. So back in 2019, their Energy Star score was 51. This means they were non-compliant as they needed a 66. And they engaged Honeydew to help them with their benchmarking services, consult with them on BEPS compliance, and then run the RFP to collect bids for a solar array and see which one would have the best return on investment and also assist them in their BEPS goals. So they decided to skip right over the audit initially to see if they could reach their BEPS goal of 66 Energy Star score without implementing some of the more expensive energy conservation measures that we reviewed in the previous example. So the main project that they implemented was a 187 kilowatt rooftop solar canopy. And you can see the before and after satellite images on the right there. So this system was activated and went live in March 2024. Where they engaged Honeydew, we compared two different models. We looked at doing a power purchase agreement in which they would basically lease the system and get the kilowatt hours for free from that system. Or what would it look like if they purchased the system directly, took advantage of all the federal and local incentives, and then owned the system. And so we compared those two models, and they opted for the ownership model, which means they would be getting a greater return on investment over time if they invested in the system. And specifically, those two programs that helped them the most was the 30% federal investment tax credit, which might be going away, unfortunately, with this latest quote unquote big beautiful bill that they're considering in Congress. But we'll see how that shakes out. And also, more importantly, the solar renewable energy credits, which are a local incentive, which is going to provide them with ongoing revenue as long as that system is pumping out clean energy. So what were the results? So solar during the first year, which was a partial year, about 3/4 of the year, produced 168,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. This offset 23% of the total electric usage of the building, so a very significant percentage. As a result, their Energy Star score went from a 51 to a 74, 23-point increase. This exceeded, when we did the simulation, we estimated that it would help them improve their score by 17 points, but it actually exceeded that estimate. And one of the main reasons for that is we don't know exactly how much sunshine is going to shine on these panels over the course of a year. So some years, might be cloudier than usual. Some years might be sunnier than usual. So this system overproduced our expectations. As a result, the pathway they had chosen, the standard target, they, again, like the previous example, they now have a very comfortable buffer at a 74, well above the 66 that they needed. So if they do have some variations within the evaluation year next year, they should still be comfortable in complying with BEPS. So this is the key takeaway here is solar can be a bit of a panacea for BEPS compliance in cycle 1. But very importantly, solar will only help raise your Energy Star score. So if you're on the standard target pathway, solar can help a lot, especially if you've got a big roof and relatively low energy consumption underneath that roof. However, if you're on the performance pathway, your goal is to reduce your usage by 20%. A solar array does not reduce your building's energy usage. It just means you're using more clean energy. So Energy Star score will calculate that in its determination and give you a better score. But if you're in the performance pathway and you're trying to reduce your energy usage, it's not going to help you reduce energy usage. It will help you, with a lot of economic and financial benefits and maybe pay for some of those energy conservation measures. But again, it won't help you reduce your energy usage.
Okay, thank you, AZ. So now moving on to our third case study, Logan Station Condo. Logan Station also leveraged solar in the form of the very beautiful elevated canopy system that you're seeing here going above their various rooftop units. I'm going to try to go through this one a little bit quicker because this is a case study. Lorena is going to join us at the end to give her perspective. So First thing, the background. Logan Station originally had a baseline Energy Star score of 48. Again, being under that 66, this made them subject to BEP Cycle 1. However, being that we were their benchmarker and energy consultant, we advised having a gross floor area or GFA verification done prior to any deadline. And this is because we were noticing, and many of you may have noticed after your own verifications were done, that multifamily buildings had underestimated square footage. And this is very, very important as all BEPS related metrics take square footage into account. If building square footage increases, but their usage stays the same, a building is always going to be seen as being more efficient or vice versa. So this was seen as Logan Station jumped from a 48 to a 67 after verification was completed, and they ended up actually getting removed from the Cycle 1 compliance list as a result. But being a smart, forward-thinking building, they also wanted to ensure that they would never have to worry about any BEPS future cycles, since having a score of 67 is right on the border of compliance. So this is where they explored solar with our help. So now looking at the specifics of how Logan Station went solar and the great offer that we were able to get them. So looking at the picture at the top right corner, this is not a roof that traditionally would be seen as an ideal roof for solar. There's tremendous obstruction in the form of rooftop units, condensers, piping, wiring, etc. Basically everything that you could possibly have on top of a roof. And in the past, these were not the types of roofs that could leverage solar and take advantage of the amazing local and federal incentives that AZ mentioned. But with the innovation of the elevated canopy racking system, as you can see in the bottom right picture, solar is more than possible, and in my opinion, looks the best in this form. So looking at our involvement here, we bid out this project on behalf of the association, keeping in mind that we know that they're going to need a canopy system to go over these obstructions, and knowing that they're looking for savings monetarily and electric usage wise to improve their Energy Star score. And through our bidding process, we were able to find Logan Station a power purchase agreement that got them savings, an improved Energy Star score, and upfront cash from the solar provider to pay for a 20-year roof warranty. And this was all without the building needing to invest any capital at all for the system. So really great opportunity for them. And oh, last thing was this system was also up and running by January 2024. And the results, the solar system offset a very large 29% of the building's 2024 electric usage, which is fantastic. So again, this not only netted them strong savings for their reserves, but also improved their Energy Star score to an absolutely sky-high 98 in 2024, which of course will all but certainly keep them clear of any future cycles. And there's really two key takeaways here. The first one being solar is a fantastic option for BEPS buildings, even if you have a really obstructed roof, as it can really strongly increase your score without having to invest any capital into the system. And secondly, it's always a great idea to continue to increase your Energy Star score if you have a 66, 67, 68, somewhere in that range. Not just because it gives you a buffer in case of a random energy spike, but also because, like AZ mentioned in the third slide, buildings over 50,000 square feet, which are all the buildings we're talking about today, can potentially be subject to all BEPS future cycles, and it's smart to assume that the target score is going to rise from the first cycle to the second and second to the third, because buildings are always going to get more efficient as they're being mandated to comply with BEPS. So there's kind of a rising tide effect on the entire portfolio of DC buildings that's subsequently very likely going to raise the standards from a score of 66. So the last thing you want is to reach BEPS Cycle 1 compliance with a 67, but then the baseline score for Cycle 2 might jump up a little bit, and then even though you complied with Cycle 1, you might be subject to Cycle 2. So we always think that improving to at least the low 70s when possible is recommended. But at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Lorena to discuss her perspective here at Logan Station. think you're muted, Lorena.
Lower left to the screen. I got you. You're good now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hello, everybody. My name is Lorena Garcia. I am with Abris Real Estate Management. We took over Logan Station in 2019. And as David explained, we were subject to BEPS. So although our property received an exemption from DC's building energy performance standards, due to the GFA verification, the board felt it was important to proactively address long-term energy efficiency and sustainability goals. We didn't want to wait until the compliance was mandatory again, so we saw an opportunity to take control of our energy future, reduce costs, and improve our environmental impact. Investing in solar was aligned with the community's values and our commitment to be responsible property management. So Honeydew played a really crucial role from the beginning to the end. They assisted and provided pricing and reputable companies to provide services for the GFA verification, which actually helped us jump up to not require the pathways. Then they provided a comprehensive evaluation on the solar options. Once the board had a discussion about it, we asked them to assist us from the system sizes and layout feasibility to financial models and potential incentives. Their guidance gave the board confidence to make an informed decision. And that's when we decided that we were going to go with this. The installation process was very smooth. Again, thanks to Honeydew, who was able to facilitate that with the people who installed it. Once we selected the solar partners, permitting and engineering took a few months, followed by the installation. There were some obviously expected coordination efforts with our roofing structure and access planning, but overall the disruption to residents was very minimal. The vendor handled most of the logistics, and we were kept informed every step of the way. We structured the deal through a PPA agreement, and I don't know if David wants to go a little bit further into that, which included a one-time upfront lease payment. The immediate capital really helped offset some of the reserve contributions for the association, and it also helped us get a 20-year roof contract where we were able to make sure that our roof is checked every single year to make sure that it's in good condition. The PPA rate, additionally, our PPA rate, it was significantly lowered than our current utility rate, providing immediate utility savings with no upfront investment from the association. This structure allowed us to generate clean energy and create financial value for the building. My recommendations to DC properties and now Montgomery County properties is to start early. Even if your building is exempt from performing well now, regulations are getting better. Early actions give you more time, options, and control. So definitely start early, start your research now, and talk to Honeydew. They can provide a lot of options. Using partners that you trust, firms like Honeydew that understand DC's regulatory environment can help simplify the complexity and maximize your return. Very, very important. Think beyond compliance. BEPS is a great motivator, but these projects can bring long-term value. Solar can reduce operational costs, improve value, and demonstrate environmental leadership. And then educate your boards in the community. Transparent communication and clear analysis can help gain support and reduce pushback. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you. This was a very good experience for my building, and hopefully it can work for your building. Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you, Lorena. From here, I'm gonna pass it back to AZ, but yeah, thank you again. That's great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lorena, for those wise words and accolades as well. It's always good to get that feedback. And just to echo something I said before I move on to Glendale, it really looks like Congress is going to be phasing out the federal tax credit, which again is 30% the cost of the system. So these deals that we've been able to get in the past are really going to be watered down most likely beginning next year. So if you are considering getting solar on your building's rooftop, I really, really encourage you to try to get a contract signed this year, as long as we can safe harbor a lot of those contracts, meaning if 5% of the total contract price is paid within this year, you can still get that full 30% tax benefit. And even if you're a non-for-profit, there are ways that we can pass through that benefit to the members. And it's really easy to do it when we do a power purchase agreement, like with what Lorena's building went through, because that will all be done through the solar provider, and they'll take care of all the tax paperwork, and your association won't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But small digression there. Let's talk about Glendale Plaza Apartments. So this is the first apartment building that we're going to look at. And the reason we focused in on this building is because this is going to bring us the last puzzle piece, which is how do you pay for all these energy conservation measures by leveraging local incentives? And DC actually does have a lot of really great local incentives. So let's dive in and look at those in some more detail here. So Glendale Plaza, their 2019 score was a 33, so the lowest of the group that we're looking at today. This was obviously non-compliant. They engaged Honeydew to do their benchmarking services, and their initial strategy was to reduce their energy usage by 20%. And they were able to do this by receiving some DCSU grants, including what's called an ARA grant, which is an Affordable Housing Retrofit Accelerator. And this was able to pay for their audit and certain energy conservation measures. As the name would imply, this is only available for affordable housing. But they were able to get some other grants before they got their ARA grant. And those grants help them pay for high efficiency hot water heaters, boilers, and chillers. So this is really all three of their main mechanical systems, which had the biggest impact on their energy usage intensity. What they used their ARA grant to pay for were lighting upgrades to go LED, boiler and pipe insulation, smart thermostats, occupancy sensors on their lighting. They fixed a leaking water pump. They replaced that. And then they also upgraded their washer and dryers to Energy Star appliances. So they really took a lot of different measures with these grants and were able to leverage them effectively. So here we have an actual photograph from the job site. And a lot of people don't realize is that $20 bills have a very low thermal conductivity rating, so they make great insulation. I'm joking, of course. They used actual insulation. This was just some fun we were having with AI. So the project incentives, the pre-ARA energy conservation measures, they were able to pay for 50% of them. So very large margin through those DCSU programs. For those of you who don't know, DCSU is the District of Columbia Sustainable Energy Utility, which is the main administrator for energy-related grants. And then the energy conservation measures under the ARA plan included, paying for that energy audit, which, as David mentioned, is going to really create that roadmap for what the biggest bang for your buck will be in terms of what you invest for energy conservation measures. And the ARA grant's great because it funds 100%. So it's a really wonderful program if you come from a lower income building. So let's take a look at the results and the key takeaways from these projects. They were able to reduce their electricity consumption by 21% as of 2024. And their natural gas was reduced by 17% after they've upgraded their systems. This resulted in a 30-point increase in their Energy Star score. So amazing. They basically doubled their Energy Star score. And then importantly, from a compliance perspective, they had a baseline energy usage reduction of 21%, which was just over what they needed for that 20% reduction. And so the key takeaways here, the phased grant-supported retrofits can deliver BEPS compliance while minimizing financial strain. And certainly, whether your building is affordable housing or not, we can help you look into paying for those different energy conservation measures with some grants or low interest rate loans. And so this concludes our case study portion of the presentation, and I'm very proud to be handing over the presentation to our esteemed colleague and friend, Molly Peacock, who's a partner over at Brillia Hundley, and there she runs the Community Association Department, and she is also co-chair of the DC LAC here at CEI. So without further ado, take it away, Molly.
Thank you very much, AZ and David and Lorena and everybody for being here. Nobody likes listening to lawyers very long, so I'll be quick. And first, I have a few updates that came down after we finalized our slides here about trends. Trends are tough to talk about because I don't want to get people's hopes up. And if I'm in your shoes, the audience, I'm thinking, well, trends is fine, but what has been enacted? What has been decided? So I'm about to launch forth and talk about things that have not been decided. But then again, not looking at trends, not looking at what we have heard from the mayor, from the DC Council might be coming also is bad, because then we're a little more blindsided. We can at least take these growing rumors, not really rumors, but statements of what might happen in terms of law changes related to BEPS. We can take them, use them as a factor in how we proceed, how we use our money, how we use our time. So that, I would say, would be the value of talking about trends, which I'm about to do. As many of you may heard, and maybe you jumped for joy like I did, the mayor has suggested that she might like to pause in the BEPS enforcement. This pause has not been finalized. And a few weeks ago this month, Councilmember Allen said, hey, I think the pause is going to be stricken from our budget, the budget support action that the council was talking about so no pause. Then again, on June 18, AOBA, which many of you probably heard of, it's the Association for Apartments and Office Buildings, very, powerful lobby association, AOBA. And AOBA is involved with these discussions about BEPS, these discussions with DC Council, I would say lobbying, local lobbying efforts. Side note, AOBA is represented, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Honeydew, but on a task force that the mayor established years ago. Notably, the community association industry has been excluded from this task force. So well done, you all are here. This group right here has been the shadow task force to look after our industry and make our concerns known to the DC lawmakers. We are not completely opposed to improving energy usage, of course, by buildings, including condominium buildings and cooperatives. However, such as a pause, sometimes a building is not a good news stories like the Philmar, the Glendale, and the other case studies we heard today. Sometimes it's a very bad news story, and it's a crushing thing. So even without the DC LAC's strident advocacy, which we have been in the wings, but we have not been in front, except for last year when I testified, but of this as much as AOBA, for example. Even without all of us, Mayor has suggested, I think she's getting heat from AOBA and others, that BEPS is very difficult to effectuate. She has suggested a pause. What does that mean? That means that cycle 2 would be delayed. It would begin in 2034. Cycle 3 would begin in 2040. Seems like far away. Doesn't mean it's never going to happen. And I've heard nothing about completely striking BEPS and energy compliance and benchmarking from the law entirely. So let us not go crazy with this maybe good news, which is merely a trend, as I discussed. Another aspect of this pause is that if a building is not compliant by its evaluation year, which is coming up for some, then that deadline extends to the year before the next cycle. So it extends, could be quite a bit. It's also relevant that this pause was suggested 2 years ago and failed. That provides some context that there is interest out there in having this sort of delay. But the delay is definitely controversial. We have council members such as Alan who are very much against a delay and want to take it out of the budget entirely. A delay would be more business friendly, which I understand that the mayor is very keen to be, and I guess the trends nationwide is to try to be more business friendly. That's a delicate balance for the mayor and DC Council, because the fact is BEPS would potentially if compliance is financially impossible for unit owners and unit owners associations, then we have a driving away effect on residents in DC. And always remember that any change to any law in DC requires both the DC Council and Congress to approve, and both of those have to approve the budget, which is at issue here, which is what's containing this potential pause. So all that to say, and we'll have a next step slides in a few slides, but I'll start repeating this, which you've already heard from Lorena and others, is that buildings should continue in their compliance efforts and not pause those. But have this good news, potential good news, if they're going to have trouble complying, maybe we'll have a little relief, but we don't know that yet. So next slide for some other interesting potentials. So that big, beautiful bill that another of us mentioned earlier in this talk has a provision that strangely, I mean, I think it's strange, but would cut Energy Star entirely, which means that ESPM, which is Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is an entity within EPA, which is the backbone. It's how energy usage is measured. Without that, it would be very difficult to comply basically with any energy laws that DC has. So if this bill gets passed with this cut in it, and who knows if it will even get passed or what the final version will look like, but this is a big, huge, this would be a big impact. So we'll just have to keep watching it. And as this slide, as we were telling you, there's no confirmed replacement platform. So we have no idea. We couldn't prepare. We wouldn't really want to anyway that much before we knew that this was real. But there, no replacement platform says to me, if you want to know my speculative thought on this, means that maybe this is not really going to happen, because how are you going to completely eliminate this with no alternative? Well, I guess you go to private companies. So there's no choice really but to continue using ESPM, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, to track and to be your measurement. So really there's nothing to do here but be worried. Just kidding. Don't be worried. You can know this and be erudite in knowing it. But we'll just have to keep watching, keep coming to these webinars.
And Molly, I'll just chime in for a second. Mention we have backed up all of our data on private servers should Energy Star Portfolio Manager go away. We really hope it won't, but if it does and there's an alternative, we will be able to preserve that data.
Thank you, AZ. So next, I'm going to talk about that we were hearing all the goodness from the solar arrays that buildings have gone forth with, such as Logan Station with Lorena's and Honeydew's help. There is also a threat to this investment tax credit, which relates to solar tax credit, ITC. The I stands for investment, which means that, which it potentially is that federal rollbacks would eliminate the 30% ITC. This would the reality of this would be that PPAs and roof leases would be severely hindered in terms of being marketable in the marketplace. And community associations who are interested in this would lose an opportunity that is a very good opportunity for many community associations these days. If if your board of directors and management have the brain power to go through this and a lawyer to look at your documents and your proposed contracts. This has not happened yet. And the one thing we can rely on is that if you, in all my research, it does appear that there's no clawback, meaning basically even current signed contracts not completed would be grandfathered. So the bottom line of this is if your building is interested in installing solar arrays and moving forward with a PPA or roof lease, best to move quickly. You hear that a lot, probably from people like me and Honeydew and others saying, oh, you better hurry up and do XYZ. Well, if you have interest, if you don't have interest, obviously not, but if it is very possible that you would not have this ability in a few years if the feds cut this solar tax credit. So that is the heads up on that. And next slide has our next steps, I believe. Yes. Correct. Absolutely. Yes. Yep. Proceed as if BEPS deadlines will remain unchanged. The fact is we don't know that they're going to be changed. There's some talk that they may be changed. There's also talk that they will not be changed. So there's no other way but to continue full speed ahead, really, as from a prudence standpoint. Stay informed, of course, talk to your lawyer, talk to your advisors, and move with diligence on any kind of energy reducing efforts in your building. Because after all, it not only helps legal compliance, but it helps put, ideally, money back in the pockets of you, really, the homeowners. So really great to be with you. And I think we left some time for questions.
All right. And so I think, Cameron, can we open up the floor to the audience members if they want to chime in? I think we've responded to most of the questions through a chat, but let us know if we missed anything here.
Since this is a DC laws update in toto, I just want to mention that the CAI and this wonderful crew have talked a lot about what should we focus on for our legislative updates this year. And we did choose to focus on BEPS and this kind of big news that there might be a pause, but also what does success look like, which is what we did on a majority of this. We went on a deep dive because in my practice and in my experience and many other of my colleagues and community managers, Lorena, feel free to chime in. Oh, if you're still here. BEPS compliance has taken up a lot of time and potential money and attention for many buildings. So this has been a very relevant area of law that we wanted to do a deep dive. There are a few other things going on, I'll say for the sake of the comprehensive legislative update. I'll highlight two. Two are the DC LAC is working hard and working with a lobbyist to update the insurance deductible law in Washington, D.C., which currently is a very good, has great bones. It's got really good, much better bones than I would say its neighboring jurisdictions. And it's modern, shockingly, on a baseline. However, part of the DC insurance deductible law for condominiums has now become obsolete, and that's the $5,000, unless otherwise stated in condo instruments, cap, so to speak, on the pass-through for insurance deductibles, because hardly any deductibles these days, because we're in a hard insurance market, it's $5,000 and you don't want it to be. So all that's getting kind of detailed, but the point is we on the DC LAC are trying to change that law to right size it. It's kind of a good news housekeeping story. And we have not achieved an amendment yet. And we don't have a sponsor quite yet, although we are close to having one. And when an amendment would occur is anyone's guess, certainly not in the next few months, but that is on the horizon, another trend. You probably already heard about the changes in switching gears slightly, the DC Warranty Act. Take a look if you haven't and if you're dealing with warranty claims. And then lastly, the DC LAC is continuing to and has been working on Washington, D.C.'s first ever HOA Act to pass in toto, just from nothing to having an act that helps HOAs, as opposed to condominiums, operate with a law helping them. And the idea is to help homeowners figure things out without having to spend a lot of money on legal fees or have a lot of stress. It gives some clarity in addition to the governing document. So those are a couple of the highlights going on in DC's legislative landscape. Thanks for listening.
And Molly, looks like we've got a question from Perry on the issue of residential submetering, which is a very pertinent issue. For those of you who don't know, due to some sort of archaic laws on the books, condominiums and cooperatives cannot submeter individual units if they haven't been done so by PEPCO. We have engaged City Council, and we've put out a white paper. One of the biggest recommendations in that white paper is to allow submetering, which would greatly help, certainly with condominiums and co-ops in complying with BEPS regulations and ensuring more individual accountability on unit owners. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that effort, Molly.
Thank you, AZ. Great question, Perry. You're right. It is such a potentially powerful change in the right direction. And to answer your question, that just as AZ said, our creation of executive white paper and our use of that with the help of our lobbyist has been our strategy. Also, an additional, which is that we are more aggressively trying to get ourselves onto the mayor's task force by watching the task force. And we've made some inroads there in the sense that we have been invited to even come to a task force meeting, which is nice if a meeting occurs, which Julian has been diligently watching, and no meeting has occurred, so we have not gone yet. But we are pushing ourselves more into the mayor's view, and we'll bring up the submetering issue as soon as we can get somebody's attention.
All right, anybody else have any questions out there? Time is now to ask them.
Whenever I talk to our lobbyist in DC and others around, when I'm at a cocktail party, just kidding, when I'm at networking events, everybody's topic is the stadium and how the DC Council's attention is completely absorbed. And I think there are a few deadlines coming up soon related to the stadium, related to the budget passage of the budget. So the experts in political advocacy have said it would be impossible to get the DC Council's attention prior to the next, which is coming up, I think, in July, decision point with regard to the stadium, because that has consumed all of their attention. And I guess that's always going to be the case. However, it is a relevant point. In any case, we're going to still push full steam ahead and keep everyone informed. Well, look at that. We're 4 minutes early. Give you 4 minutes of your day back. I really appreciate everyone who has come to this. If anybody has questions or lingering thoughts, etc., you can reach out to anybody here or WMCCAI, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate you.